So how's everything for you so far?
It's good. My family and I just moved to Atlanta. I've been in Santa Barbara the last 9 years, and my wife's been there, born and raised in LA, and then the last 15 years for her in Santa Barbara. And just got to Atlanta to begin work with Peak Performance Project. Um, and yeah, about 7 weeks in right now, and we're adjusting well. Things are good. There's no beaches like Santa Barbara here, but other than that, we're having a great time here in Atlanta, Georgia.
Cool, cool. I thought that Santa Barbara also has like peak three performance over there, right?
Yeah, so that's actually how my time with them began. Is I was in Santa Barbara for 9 years with the track club, and I was an athlete for 5 years, and I went into coaching, and we had a youth club, we had private coaching, we had an Olympic development program. So I was working all those pieces, and P3 and I kind of first crossed paths when I was doing some speed work with some of their football clientele. And there was also time where the track club athletes in 2018, 19 began training in P3 and doing their weight programs there 2 to 3 times a week. And so I was coaching, I was communicating like, here's what we did. Here's, you know, this guy's strong and weak events. This lady's good events and bad events here and there. So we've always had an open dialogue and collab there. And I've also, with the youth club, trained some of the owners and staff's kids and relatives. So I had the youth athletes, I had the pro athletes, and there was just this, it's Santa Barbara is a small community and a great community. So there was collab there. And I did, when I decided and we decided that to take this role, I did a few months there, just in lead up to this move to hit the ground running out here in Atlanta. So yeah, always a crossover, and that's the big connection. I knew the whole crew and staff while living in Santa Barbara for the last 9 years.
Cool. So Jack is in Santa Barbara, right?
Yeah, and Jack and I have known each other for 3 4 years now, and did he just do an episode with you?
No, we're gonna do that uh Friday because
Got it.
of
Okay,
the
very cool.
internet.
Got it. No, yeah. So I know Jack, and Jack was there for those 3 months that in lead up to me moving out here. And Jack's awesome and plenty of experience. I know he's picked up hockey as a an athlete now, just to fill some time there. And great to be around, great coach, and works with the pros and the amateurs out in Santa Barbara. And a lot of good conversations and training days with Jack prior to getting out here. And we've talked here and there, just, keep it going. We're on both coasts, but working for the same company, doing the same thing. And yeah, that's cool. I'm glad you guys will talk Friday.
Nice, man, nice. So I know you've talked a little about your background and where you're from, but still, like, can you introduce yourself, like who you are and like your education, that kind of stuff, a little bit? Appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Tom FitzSimons, grew up in Hamden, Connecticut. I went to Mount St. Mary's in Maryland. I did my undergrad and graduate there, 2011 and 2013. During that time, I was a student athlete. I was a decathlete for the Mount St. Mary's Mountaineers, and graduated there. And that would be the schooling education. I have credentials and stuff like that passed there, and a lot of, I guess, to experience based. So as an athlete for 5 years out in Santa Barbara with the Santa Barbara Track Club, which was led by Josh Priester from 2012 to 20. I wasn't there in 2012, but started in 2012 to about last year, and tons and tons and tons of experience with him, business, strength and conditioning, track and field, athletics, world travel. So I was lucky enough to follow my wife to the Olympics in 2016. She was the American champ in the 2016 Olympic trials in the heptathlon. And I assisted Josh down there. And I use that term loosely. Like I was helping, but Josh was coaching and I was just doing what I could as a cheerleader, a towel guy and all that type of thing. But then when I retired, I became Josh's assistant for the track club, for our Olympic development program. And so that's where we coached Lyndon Victor, Kurt Felix, two Grenadian athletes. And then Tim Earhart is U.S. champ in 2019 in the indoor heptathlon. And all this time during the track club years, we also worked the afternoons with Westmont track and field. And I was lucky to have a great group of athletes and specifically pole vaulters. And Westmont has, in the last few years, Seth Wilmoth has won 2 national titles in the pole vault. Dana Bowers on her last meet of her career in 2018 won the women's pole vault. So a lot collegiately coaching. And then right after that, some days I was even going to the youth coaching. So it just got younger as the day went, but it was going from the pros to the collegiates and then 3 days a week to the youth track and field. So then education back to that is like USATF credentials, level 1, USA weightlifting, things like that. But in terms of formal education, just Mount St. Mary's for a master's in business and an undergrad in criminal justice, which has nothing to do with strength and conditioning, but happy to be here.
Cool, man. So I've been following like the P3 performance like for years, and to be able to talk to you and Josh, it's an honor.
I appreciate that, but I think you got a lot of great things going yourself.
Appreciate that, man. So first of all, I want to talk about I noticed that you train like track and field athletes, right? But in P3, there's a lot of like team sport athletes. Am I right?
Correct.
And
Yep.
and I also noticed you train you train a lot of them, lot of like the team sport athletes speed. Why is that? Why do you think that team sport athlete need to train speed?
Yeah, no, great question. Right now we have a lot of baseball players and baseball off season. So our off season is when we see them a lot of times, but there's many reasons. Some of it is they are accelerating many times at critical points in the game and they need to learn how to do it well. If you need to throw well, swing to hit well, you need to run well, right? And so a lot of things we do, whether we're loading up the body through our resistance training, our strength training, or running, right? We're trying to increase their athleticism, their ability to compete at a high level. So it's part of the game. They're running, they're moving, they're going side to side. So it's important there. And then even outside to some of my football players and some of the ones that I was most nervous with because they were very established NFL players, and I'm ready for the session. And this is years ago, but I was like, it's like, man, this is one of my first times with an NFL athlete, and I realized like 5 minutes into the warm up, like this guy's never been told how to move his body. He's been told where to be. He's been told why he needs to be there, and he probably gets in trouble if he's not there. But he's never been told push this way, accelerate this way, turn. Like there was no level of coaching about how to actually accelerate, how to actually hold your posture when sprinting, how to get out of a cut, how to maintain the most basic linear forward speed. So big part of the game. And then for a lot of sports, like they might never get up to their max velocity. But max velocity training actually enhances that acceleration profile. Acceleration training can, you become a better accelerator. It doesn't necessarily make you faster at max velocity, but training max velocity and putting such high amounts of force in a quick amount of time actually increases an athlete's ability to accelerate. So as we know, many games can be called game of inches or game of yards or whatever. We're training to get to that next level. Another reason we do so much speed is just like when we are squatting, we're lunging, we're hitting, whatever we're doing, we're trying to give the athlete a stimulus to then respond and get better from, right? And a training stimulus. Running sometimes is, it's not this awesome squat, step up, lunge movement and but it's so quick, it's so potent, and you're providing between 4 and 5 times an athlete's body mass and force in about a tenth of a second. And there's not a lot of movements that I can do in the gym that provide that much force that quickly that'll also mimic very important moves that a variety of athletes have to do in their game.
Cool. So you mentioned that you've trained like NFL player, right? And there's like baseball player. So when training speed, how is the programming, like speed, the speed training programming gonna be different with like 100-meter athletes?
Yeah. So with a 100-meter athlete, there's the running is their sport, right? So when I'm training a baseball guy, when I'm training a football player, it's a very important piece of their game, but like there's many other pieces we all know: swinging, hitting, moving, avoiding, all that. It's a closed task when you're going forwards and you're racing in a straight line here or around the curve, around the track. So a lot of their practice is already going to be geared towards like, we have all these cues, these movements, these feelings. Like when I don't in deep into the middle of track season, I might not be saying toes up, dorsiflexed, hit this position. We're probably just going to be on our on days super aggressive and get after it, because we've laid 4 to 6 months of a base layer of these great technical movements. When I have a football player that has to deal with getting hit, hitting someone else, catching the ball, guarding some whatever, that running and having their toe, like that might leave, right? That might not be their top priority right now. So there's constant reminders of their form and how they're moving, if we're talking speed training. And another thing is like max velocity, right? Like a sprinter, 100-meter sprinter is going to have a lot longer max velocity sessions than any NBA player would ever have. And, I could see arguments on both sides, whether NBA guys should be exposed to top end speed, how often they should be, if at all. Obviously, a 100-meter sprinter is going to be exposed to weekly max velocity sessions that an NBA player couldn't even handle, because they have so many other things to do, not because they're not strong and great athletes. And it's just, the body type of probably, a tall or short 100-meter champion, and their weight, we're talking lighter guys and super forceful, super powerful. But their sport is to run in a straight line, and they don't have to worry about every other piece. I guess, let's see, another piece of training. Speed's awesome, and we all love speed, but I don't have any deceleration in a 100-meter sprinter's training program. No change of directions. No, your reaction is go. In all other in field sports, it's where am I going? When am I going? How, like, every single step might be completely different. They might be fast, efficient, and great, but there's not this smooth rhythm of your acceleration phase, and then you're holding your max velocity for about 3 seconds, and then you're hanging on. You're never going to get that 9 to 10 second rep without interference in any other sport. So rambling a bit here, but I guess the last piece was deceleration. I will never personally have deceleration in a 100-meter sprinter. They might have that in their plyos. They might have that in if they're catching an Olympic lift and they're, racing for it there, but we're not cut, go, left, right, those kind of things.
Cool. So, in the message, we talk about like the broad jump and the correlation with acceleration, right? There's a ton of like coaches talking about broad jump and acceleration. So can you like explain it to us, like how does that work and why?
Sure. The lead biomech in Atlanta, Leah, would do this a lot more justice, and anything I'm about to say is hopefully not ruining her work here. So this is, and I've seen it before in the snap, but like my latest insight on it is my coworker Leah here. So shout out to her. But when you broad jump, it's a horizontal movement, right? As is sprinting, as is acceleration. I guess the data was suggests that vertical power doesn't necessarily always translate forward, but if you have a great broad jump, you have a great horizontal leap, you're probably good also at the vertical. But if we just look at the angles and we look what you have to do from an acceleration stance or from just to get going, your shins dropping, that ankle needs to be pushing out and not giving when we're on the flat ground and you're just doing a vert jump. We're not really like taxing that ankle joint because there's nowhere for the ankle to go. It's here. But when we're going forwards, if we have this big give and there's a lot of time going this way and I'm trying to go forwards, that could be a piece. But also what's in the research they say is the knee velocity and how quick that extends, knee extension velocity. That's the biggest indicator, the correlation with our broad jump and our acceleration. Like being good at extending that knee is going to lead you to be a very good broad jumper, is going to lead you to be execute an acceleration very well. And if you just look at the angles, we're moving at 40 to 50 degrees in this direction, going across. Broad jumps off two legs. This becomes one, but once you get that momentum, a lot of people feel really good. And then I guess with training the broad jump is there's different ways to do it. I lean, and this is open to interpretation for others or difference of opinion. I band it a lot. One, because I think it gives the athlete something to work against. And then two, I think it actually reduces the impact. Same thing as like a box jump where you don't always land on the ground. You jump up on the box to limit the impact. I do the same thing. So we're not going as far. We don't have this awful, sloppy heel to toe smack. If I could jump 10 feet, make the athlete jump 6 with a band. And once again, they get this cue to, I need to get this band and I'm extending and I'm going forwards and preserve the body a bit that, I'll talk about landing and how to do it well. And I want them to kind of, not land hard and just, rock their knees and ankles every single time. But so I program with a band a lot. And then there's also the adding to the eccentric load where sometimes whether it's broad jump or for a box jump, where you have dumbbells by your side and you bring that weight down with you, you release at the bottom and jump up. Jack would love to chat about that one too. But that gets more vertical than broad, but you could do it really either way. But large correlations between broad jump performances and people's 10-yard and 20-yard acceleration profiles.
Cool. So besides broad jump, I also like noticed that you use like med ball with your jumping when you train athletes, right?
Yeah, I've done. Are you talking like the stuff outside on the turf, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I use med ball. So kind of going back to your other question about the difference of training a field sport athlete and a 100-meter guy. In a track program, I wouldn't necessarily have them do med ball the same day that they're doing their excels or their top end or anything like that. But field sport athletes, a lot of times I see them 2 or 3 times a week. Back in Santa Barbara, now I see some of these baseball players 4 to 5 times a week. So it's a little different. But because in a private training type of world, if I see you once or twice, I'm trying to get a few things in. So what I'm getting across in the med ball is like we're loading the body. We have triple flexion, and then we are driving aggressively into triple extension. Similar to the broad where we're talking that's off 2 feet and running is on 1. Just trying to cue the athlete to like be explosive, get to full extension, using everything here. If they get stuck to the ground, it's a really easy cue that like if they don't leave the ground when throwing, it's like I need you to get through this movement, not just half-heartedly whip it with your hand, right? It's a leg dominant movement. We are throwing with our arms, but getting your legs into it. So that would be the med ball multi throws, and I typically do underhand forwards, overhead back, I and many people, and then chest pass, and then a hop into chest pass. And when I'm coaching a field sport athlete, the way I kind of try to bridge the gap with them is like, here, all these things are extension and power and get your legs into it. And then the last one, when you're hopping into it, it's kind of like when we run, we're not on the ground, and then we are, and how quick you can get through that stride or have your ground contact and then extend and be forceful. That's where I kind of bridge that gap to that. It's not this long rolling heel to toe contact, that it's like a pretty aggressive bounce and extend. Not perfect, but that's how I kind of get the athlete thinking about what we're trying to theme in our speed session.
Cool. Love it. So the next few questions is for like if coaches want to train like track guys, okay, like 100-meter, 200-meter athletes. So if I want to like train like if the session is for acceleration, how to like build up the warm up, and what does the session layout gonna be looking like?
Sure. I will answer my end. I know there's coaches that would have
No worries, man.
everywhere, right?
Cool.
So just getting that out there that this is not the way. This is how I do. With many experiences and interactions from those type of coaches, many coaches before me. Acceleration, kind of that kind of plan is my first 5 to 10 minutes on most days is going to be similar if I'm doing max velocity or acceleration. Like if we're getting spikes on, or we're really like driving hitting a forceful run, a quick run, that piece will be the same. Going back to if I had a track guy or a field sport athlete, do they do med ball or not? The acceleration for a track guy wouldn't necessarily. When I work with my baseball guys back in Santa Barbara, on our acceleration days, we had the heavier med ball. We did a 4 or 5K, and I would cue a deeper position, kind of a longer extension, because those are the positions they're kind of mimicking in acceleration. A longer ground contact time. They're not as tall, right? Like they're going from a deep knee flexion to deep knee extension, or a complete knee extension, and that piece there. And then I'd go to a lot of resisted stuff, whether it's banded, whether it's on a run rocket or a Raptor or anything like that. And also angles, like I've seen wall drives too, also, torn apart and also supported, right? When cueing a position, right? Whether or not it's the best thing to tell the athlete to be forceful on the ground, cueing that they need to be at this angle, but like this angle is actually tall. If we just stood you up, you're here. You can have posture and acceleration and in max velocity, and it's not bent. It's a tall posture. We're pivoting you at your ankle or at your foot. And where else are we going here with acceleration? Oh, and then in mock drills, where I will have a theme day of, I call it A's. There's different terminology here. A's, if we're just going up and down, I have A's, I have ACs, I have high knees into a stride out, I have power A's where you do one side only. My acceleration days, once we get through warm up and potentially heavy med ball with a field sport athlete, is only having the athlete go piston like, going up and down. I will not open that into a B. I will not have like the hamstring from a straight leg shuffle or a cycle or anything like that, because I'm just cueing force down and back for these, whether it's 10 yards, 20 yards. Not a lot of field sport athletes that I accelerate with get to 30, because that becomes like their top end. Some depends who it is. But so yeah, later in the warm up, mock drills or sprint mechanic drills will only be piston like, and I won't open that up for any type of grab to the track. Yeah, I think I got you there or answered you there on the acceleration, I think.
Cool, man.
Happy to clear up anything.
Yeah. So how is the the acceleration session? We've finished the warm up, but how is like the training session be looking like? How many yards do we, if it's like 100-meter sprinter?
Okay, if it's 100 meters.
I know the answer is it depends, but like for acceleration, is it yeah, how many, like probably like 30 meters or like 10 meters start you're gonna be working on?
Sure. It does depend. Thank you for that grace there. But many of my programs could be 410s, 420s, 2 to 330s. And with younger athletes, which younger collegiate athletes or youth athletes, I would always say, okay, we did our 10s, we're doing 20. What changes in this first 10 now? And some guys and girls like know immediately, like nothing. And it's like, great. Other, pause, but that would be a learning moment for them. Like, look, like when you are a 100-meter runner and I tell you to do 30 or I tell you to do 10, that first push, that second step, that third, like they're the same. We are cueing the same thing out of the blocks in our acceleration every single time. So really simple one could be 410s, 420s, depending on how seasoned the athlete is, whether we're getting out to 30 or 35 or 40. Other versions could be resistance, right? They might go 10 yards resisted and then some 30. So it could be 4 to 6 10s. It takes longer, right? Like if we time the 10 or if we time the 20, it might be a similar time, closer to a 20. So that time of running is a little bit longer because you're resisted. But I haven't been in a program where we're doing 10 10s, 10 20s, and 5s. I personally haven't been involved in any of that and seen it. Not saying it doesn't exist, but acceleration is acceleration. And I know, and then on the elite side, I know those guys accelerate up to, guys and girls accelerate up to 40 to 65 meters. And I think only 1 or 2 or 3 might get up past that 60-meter mark. But anyways, acceleration can arguably be up to 50, 55. And for many athletes going 50 to 55 or 60, that they're getting in the top end for sure, right? That's we've exited our, for those that use drive phase or those that hate it, sorry, our acceleration phase. But 50 would be a very long acceleration session for many athletes, and 20 or 30 is the max I take a baseball or football athlete through.
Cool.
For an acceleration day.
Cool. I love your approach, man. Love your approach.
I appreciate it.
So,
We'll see what the replies are.
so, we've done the acceleration session. How about the max V session for warm up and their sessions?
Sure. So going back to, so I would personally have a similar warm up, the very first 5 to 10 minutes of our drills. We're moving, we're skipping around, we're lunging, we're getting loose, leg swings. Med ball, 4 athletes that are throwing med ball on that day. I go down to a 2K, and this thing about 4 pounds, 4.5 pounds, and it's light. And I might not cue as deep. It doesn't matter if they kind of get there, but they're launching this ball. They're launching the heavy one as fast as they can too. But like, we got to notice the difference on this max velocity day, going into flexion, going into extension, aggressive, fast, move the ball. You're going to be moving your body fast. I want you to move the ball fast right now as we're still getting warm. And then max velocity in our mock drills are our sprint mechanics. B's, which can mean different things for different people, but when we kind of unhinge that ankle and pull it back, get more of a scrape. There's ankling, which are the mini circles. There's cycle runs, which are bigger. There's straight leg bounds and shuffles. I start with a bound before, I start with a shuffle before I get to a bound for like weeks and sessions, not like, oh, we did one, it looks great, let's get to a bound. But we go from piston, like I might still have A's in there for like 1 or 2, and then go into, even for my young athletes, he asked one time, why don't we go from A skip to B skip? Why are we separate them? And, a lot of times you have like, well, because, and I was like, that's a great question. And I kind of like in some sessions like, let's do it. Like if we go from acceleration into top end, let's do an acceleration mechanic and a top end mechanic and bridge them right here. Like make it smooth. So I've had people go from A's to B's. It's not a critical change in Seth Wilmot's program, but when he won his second national title, I know that was part of what we did on his bigger days was A skip to B skip. Once again, like a percent of the impact. But and then instead of there's no resistance on max velocity days for me in my programs, and you might build up smoother through your first 20, and we get up to a postural easy 60 before we actually get into our max velocity sessions. And then what is max velocity is holding your top end speed, which can only be done for most of the population from 2.5 to 3.5 is like the elite of the elite of the elite. Hold it for 3.5 seconds if they do it all. So a 30-meter fly, a 20-meter fly, and just pockets of that with long recovery. Acceleration, I've read, if you run a 10, take a minute. If you run a 20, take 2 minutes. If you run a 30, take 3, that kind of thing. If you're running a 20-meter fly, it took you 25 to 40 meters to get up to that. Then you're holding on for that 2-second fly. There should be 5 to 7. I'm sure somebody in this world would say 9 minutes in between. A lot more recovery on max velocity days. There's the eccentric load is a little bit more on the body, right? Like we're upright, we're going this way, but like you're managing those contacts in a different way than you do acceleration. So the eccentric load's higher. The hamstrings, we're opening those up more, right? And so recovery's longer. And so like doing 150s, doing 200s, for sure, doing 250, like those aren't max velocity days, right? If you're doing a nice big old warm up and you do 2 150s with 12 minutes in between, sure, you can make the argument that also you're tapping into slightly a different system because we're going as fast as we can for well over 3 seconds. So we're decelerating just a little bit. So it's no longer max velocity. So personally, 20 to 30 meters, long rest, build into it. And then like after those sessions, is matching those kind of contacts or those themes here. So like on an acceleration day, going back a little bit, but kind of answering both, is there might be more of a snatch, which is a long movement, front squat, back squat, whatever, goblet squat, longer knee dominant movements and full ranges of motion. And then I might have on our max velocity day a hang clean, a short box step up with a little bit of intent, a trap bar deadlift that we can move up with speed, because like just a little bit quicker, and could be a stress for some people. I really like to theme it out that way. It's like, we accelerated, we're doing these type of lower body movements, and we just hit max velocity, and we're being quick and we're being efficient, and I still need you to bring what we just did on the track. And okay, we took our shoes off, we cooled down a bit, and now we're over here, and let's be just as fast, and try to touch on that same system. Yeah, that's the way I personally like to split those days, from med ball early to their weights later, and their intervals throughout those sessions.
Cool. Love it.
Thanks.
So we've discussed like acceleration, we've discussed like max velocity. So how about the start? So when I saw the NFL Combine, they use like 3-point start, right? But when we see like athletes like track guys, they use like block start. So how to set up for like 3-point start and like the block start?
Sure. What you're going to see a lot in field sport athletes is the first time you say get down, and you can explain a 3-point stance and say, I want this spacing, this spacing. I see a lot of that back leg is just almost straight and extended, just way behind them. And as a teaching point, I kind of have them stand up out of that. Like, look, your back leg's extended, your front leg's bent. Like, let me see you jump from this position vertically, because we're trying, similar how we talked about the broad jump and the vert jump earlier. Like, you're trying to be explosive just here and at an angle, for those listening and not watching my hand movements here. But you need that flex, right? We need to be able to use it in a second here. So that needs to be flex. So to keep it simple for my field sport athletes, I have them do, if we're putting our hand down, and I personally do, and I've seen a lot like, oh, this false step or this drop step, like I don't change it. It's fine. And I do see their arguments and their reasons. I like to teach a static 3-point start, at least at some point, whether or not they ever hit that in the game. And 99% don't. I have seen some people like tagging it from third base with a hand down, and people in football lining up with a hand down from 3-point start every time, or in a very critical moment in their career from a 40-yard dash, which could make or break them making the league, or make or break their draft stock. So I coach it because I want all the intent out of that push. We coach so many other things so specifically, and then running, which is what every athlete's going to do. I also want this in their bag. I want this tool in their toolbox. I want it to be sharp. And I want them to know what it feels like to actually be in a loaded stance and drive out 1, drive out 2, drive out 3. Get everything out of that. Great. When you're dribbling down the court and you don't get that low and you don't pause, I understand that. But you have like, what it feels like to push very aggressively. So it might not hit that, but at least you have some awareness of that ability, that task, that skill. So I go 2 feet back from the line. I go 3 to 3.5 feet. Sometimes for athletes, like they put that back foot at like 5 feet, and we really bring that back in. Another thing for people seeing this is like a lot of guys will like line up like on a tightrope, and that's like just stand smooth. Like your feet aren't touching when you stand up. Like stand smooth and natural. And then a block setting for track and field, like we have that block spine that naturally makes you split anyways. So maybe that's what I need to do, is just have that lying around for people that'll never use it, just to see it. But opposite hand. So if it's right, left, right, and free hand behind you, or left, right, left. And so then some other things that I cue through and kind of change is like a lot of people's chest will end up on their quad and they're just so crunched up and their hips are low or that back leg's back. I was like, I need 2 tennis balls. This can be argued in many circles. It's just a cue that I use for guys on an acceleration day. Tennis ball from your chest to your quad. I need 2 of them. We just need to have some space, because if we're at the bottom of the squat, that might be our weakest point, and you're kind of matching that position. When you're all the way down and your chest and your quad are very, very close, you're not the strongest there. You're stronger in the middle towards the top of it. I need you to get a little extended. And then people get a little uncomfortable putting weight on the hand or way too much. So NFL Combine might be a little different. It is a little different. I wouldn't say exactly this. This is for people getting going. It's like, just put a decent amount of weight in that front hand. It might be a third, but when we push, we're pushing everything off those 2 feet. Going to the 4-point or the block start, similar spacing. I know, like, as a decathlete, I hurdled with my right leg in front in the blocks, and I ran the 100 and the 400 with my left, because I was 7-stepping to the first hurdle, so it mattered my spacing, but I felt better to push for the 100 and 400 off my left. I went 2 feet and 2 fingers from the line every time. I know people have their tape measures. I know I don't understand the fist. I see a lot of people fist from the line. My 2 feet aren't changing. I'm wearing the same spikes. I go 2 feet, put 2 fingers, put the block there. Other one, I step right across, 2 fingers, put the block there. So I was probably 25 inches and 37 or 7.5 inches in my block setting, which no one needs to take notes on how good my blocks were. Like, I did it a lot. It doesn't mean they were blazing fast. And that was the same for me on both sides, like, whether I was pushing out. And same thing here is like, we're trying to push out. You're never going to push out flat, right? You're hitting the ground here, but 40 to 45 degrees, I want that back block set at a similar position to, like, kind of reflect the ground. When we're in max velocity, the ground, breaking news here, is flat, is right beneath us, and we might have the slight forward lean. When the block pedal is at 45, like, I want to similarly matching that angle coming out. So that's your earth, that's your ground, but it's here, so we push out. In the NFL Combine versus the block setting, some guys, especially inexperienced or weaker runners, like, that heel is going to clap down before they go. The block doesn't allow that because it's pinned there for sprinters in track and field. And let's see what else. There's things I'll tell baseball and football guys almost every time, that after a few weeks with track, or some experienced guys coming out of high school or college programs that came to Westmont or to the track clubs, like, I don't talk about certain things because they have it either naturally or it was coached into them and that's just what they do. But I want you to extend and push very well on 1. And now I want you to do it again on 2, because now you have momentum. And if we're going 100 meters, I can't have you tall on step 2. Like, it's over, right? We need to drive, we need to accelerate and keep going. So powerful, extensive steps. If we're potentially accelerating for 45 meters, you need to be pushing and not rushing in on step 2, step 3. And similarly, going back to the field sport, they're never, like, they either have a bag 90 feet away or they have a player 3 yards in front of them. They don't have 40 meters to figure out their acceleration. So they need to get that foot back down. Still be forceful, still be powerful, but there's a lot of things that they're taking in information the whole time. It's not a closed task. It's a very, very open task for them to do. But going way back, and I'll wrap it here, is I want them to at least have in their toolbox the ability to push from a 3-point stance. And wow, that did feel strong. That did feel powerful. And wherever they end up in the game, cool. push as best you can from said position.
Cool. Appreciate that. I love that when you try to like, because we're sitting in a monitor, sitting in front of our computer, and you try to like explain it, you use your arm to like explain the angle. I love that, man. Appreciate
how
that.
How many people here are going to be just audio listeners?
Probably like half of them. Most,
okay,
I think most of them. No worries, man. But I love it because most of them are gonna be watching it on YouTube. So no worries.
Cool. They see all this then. Great.
So, last thing before I let you go, okay? I really enjoyed our conversation. So I'm probably gonna reach out again and try to set up a second one, okay? But still, if there's like coaches want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Great, yeah. So on Instagram, it's at Coach Tom FitzSimons, and FitzSimons is FitzSimons. So at Coach Tom FitzSimons. And yeah, I mean, if you search LinkedIn and you find a guy that says he's coach track and is at P3, that would be me. No Facebook. Twitter is not really coaching affiliated. So I have a personal Instagram and a coaching Instagram because I felt like doing that. So all coaching related stuff and all like the kind of posts you referenced earlier and a lot of the fun work I get to do at P3 is on Instagram.
Appreciate that. Love that.